Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows that following a report of a permit holder exhibiting agitated behavior in a public space in Buenos Aires, what is the most appropriate initial step for an official responsible for overseeing firearm permits in Argentina? Option A. Initiate a formal, objective investigation to verify the report against the specific requirements and limitations of the Portación de Arma de Fuego regulations, including the permit's validity and the individual's conduct. Option B. Focus solely on whether the firearm was openly or concealed carried according to the permit, disregarding any reported behavioral concerns. Option C. Proceed with the immediate suspension of the firearm permit based on the initial complaint, pending further review. Option D. Immediately dismiss the report, assuming that a valid firearm permit guarantees responsible behavior and poses no immediate risk. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal, objective investigation to verify the report against the specific requirements and limitations of the Portación de Arma de Fuego regulations, including the permit's validity and the individual's conduct. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's actions on public safety and legal compliance in Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of the Portación de Arma de Fuego regulations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing an individual's legal right to carry a firearm with the overarching responsibility to prevent its misuse and ensure public security. A permit holder's conduct, even when seemingly minor, can have significant legal and ethical ramifications, necessitating careful judgment and adherence to strict protocols. The best professional approach involves a thorough, objective assessment of the permit holder's behavior against the specific requirements and limitations outlined in Argentine law concerning the carrying of firearms. This includes verifying the validity of the permit, ensuring the firearm is carried in a manner consistent with regulations e.g., concealed or openly, depending on the permit type and local ordinances, and confirming that the individual is not exhibiting behavior that could be construed as a threat or a violation of public order. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legal framework governing firearm permits in Argentina, prioritizing both individual rights and public safety through strict adherence to established rules and regulations. It ensures that any action taken is grounded in verifiable facts and legal precedent, minimizing the risk of arbitrary judgment or misinterpretation of the law. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss a report of a permit holder's concerning behavior without a formal investigation, based solely on the assumption that a valid permit implies responsible conduct. This fails to acknowledge that a permit is a privilege, not an absolute guarantee against misuse, and that individuals can violate the terms of their permit or engage in actions that warrant further scrutiny, regardless of its validity. Such an approach risks overlooking potential threats to public safety and undermines the regulatory oversight intended by the firearm permit system. Another incorrect approach is to immediately revoke or suspend the permit based on a single, unverified complaint without due process. Argentine law requires a structured process for investigating alleged violations and determining appropriate sanctions. Acting prematurely without a thorough investigation and opportunity for the permit holder to respond is a violation of due process and legal principles. A further incorrect approach is to focus solely on the legality of carrying the firearm at a specific moment, ignoring any contextual behavioral indicators. While legal compliance is paramount, the Portación de Arma de Fuego regulations also implicitly require responsible and non-threatening behavior from permit holders. Ignoring behavioral red flags, even if the firearm is technically being carried legally, is a failure to uphold the broader public safety mandate associated with firearm permits. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the report and initiating a formal, objective investigation. This process should involve gathering all relevant facts, consulting the specific provisions of Argentine firearm laws and regulations, considering any applicable jurisprudence, and providing the permit holder with an opportunity to be heard. The decision should be based on a comprehensive assessment of the evidence against the legal standards, ensuring fairness, due process, and the paramount importance of public safety. Question 2. The evaluation methodology shows that when processing an application for a firearm permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego in Argentina, what constitutes the most robust and legally compliant approach to assessing applicant suitability? Option A. rely exclusively on the applicant's written statement and proof of residence, without conducting any independent background checks or interviews. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all submitted documentation, cross-reference it with criminal and mental health records, and conduct a thorough interview to assess understanding of responsibilities and justification for the permit. Option C. Approve the application based on the applicant's self-declared need and profession, assuming that these factors inherently qualify them for a permit. Option D. Expedite the approval process by granting the permit upon submission of the basic application form, with a promise of a later, less rigorous review. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all submitted documentation, cross-reference it with criminal and mental health records, and conduct a thorough interview to assess understanding of responsibilities and justification for the permit. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit application in Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of the legal framework governing firearm possession and the applicant's suitability. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing an individual's right to self-defense, as potentially recognized by Argentine law, with the state's paramount interest in public safety and the prevention of violence. A thorough assessment must consider not only the applicant's adherence to procedural requirements, but also their psychological stability, criminal history, and the genuine need for carrying a firearm, all within the specific context of Argentine legislation. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive review of all submitted documentation, cross-referencing it with available databases for criminal records and mental health evaluations, and conducting a thorough interview with the applicant to assess their understanding of firearm safety, legal responsibilities, and the justification for their permit request. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible firearm licensing mandated by Argentine law, such as those outlined in Law No. 25/938, National Registry of Firearm Possession, and its implementing decrees, which emphasize the applicant's suitability and the necessity of the permit. It ensures that decisions are based on objective evidence and a holistic evaluation of risk. An approach that relies solely on the applicant's self-declaration, without independent verification of their background or mental state, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for a thorough vetting process and creates a significant risk to public safety by potentially issuing permits to individuals who pose a danger. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to grant the permit based on the applicant's stated profession alone, without assessing their individual circumstances, psychological fitness, or any history of violent behavior. Argentine law requires more than just a professional justification. It demands an assessment of the individual's overall suitability and the specific threat they face. Finally, an approach that prioritizes expediency over thoroughness, by approving applications based on incomplete information or superficial checks, is also professionally unsound. This disregards the gravity of issuing a firearm permit and the potential consequences of such an oversight, violating the spirit and letter of Argentine firearm control legislation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant Argentine laws and regulations. This framework should include a systematic process for gathering and verifying information, assessing risk factors, and documenting the rationale for each decision. Ethical considerations, such as the duty to protect public safety, must be integrated into every step of the evaluation. Question 3. The control framework reveals that a resident of Buenos Aires, Argentina, is found to be carrying a firearm. What is the most appropriate professional action to take in this situation, considering the Argentine regulatory framework for firearm possession? Option A. Assess the firearm's condition and the individual's stated intent for carrying it as sufficient justification. Option B. Verify if the individual possesses a valid Portación de Arma de Fuego permit issued by the competent Argentine authority. Option C. Assume the individual is legally permitted to carry the firearm due to their residency in Argentina. Option D. Rely on informal local understandings regarding firearm possession in the absence of a formal permit. The correct answer is B. Verify if the individual possesses a valid Portación de Arma de Fuego permit issued by the competent Argentine authority. Explanation. The control framework reveals a scenario where an individual, a resident of Buenos Aires, Argentina, is found to be carrying a firearm without the necessary permit. This situation is professionally challenging because it directly implicates adherence to Argentine federal and provincial laws governing firearm possession and the potential for public safety risks. The core of the challenge lies in correctly identifying the legal requirements for firearm permits in Argentina and understanding the consequences of noncompliance. The best professional approach involves a thorough understanding and application of Argentine law regarding firearm permits. Specifically, it requires recognizing that possession of a firearm in Argentina necessitates obtaining a Portación de Arma de Fuego permit, issued by the relevant national authority, Agencia Nacional de Materiales Controlados ANMAC. This permit is not a mere formality. It involves a rigorous vetting process to ensure the applicant is fit to carry a firearm, thereby safeguarding public safety. Professionals must prioritize verifying the existence and validity of such a permit. An incorrect approach would be to assume that simply being a resident of Argentina grants an inherent right to carry a firearm. This fails to acknowledge the specific legal framework established by Argentine law, which mandates a permit for carrying a firearm. Another incorrect approach is to consider the firearm's condition or the individual's stated intent as sufficient justification for its possession without a permit. Argentine law is explicit. Possession and carrying require authorization, regardless of the firearm's operational status or the owner's intentions. Finally, relying on informal understandings or local customs that bypass official permit requirements is also professionally unacceptable. Such actions disregard the established legal order and undermine the regulatory framework designed for public safety. Professionals facing such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the relevant jurisdiction, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the specific laws governing firearm possession. 2. Ascertaining whether the individual possesses the legally mandated permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego. 3. Acting in accordance with established legal procedures for noncompliance, which may involve reporting to the appropriate authorities. This systematic approach ensures that actions are grounded in law and contribute to maintaining public order and safety. Question 4. The evaluation methodology shows that a firearm permit holder residing in the province of Buenos Aires is planning to relocate permanently to the province of Córdoba. Considering the regulatory framework for carrying a firearm permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, in Argentina, what is the most prudent course of action to ensure continued legal compliance? Option A. Rely solely on the National Firearm Registry, RENAR, to automatically update their address and permit status upon relocation, without direct communication with provincial authorities. Option B. Wait until the firearm permit needs to be renewed and then update the address with the relevant authorities, assuming it will be processed at that time. Option C. Immediately contact the relevant firearms authority in the province of Córdoba to inquire about and fulfill any necessary notification or re-registration procedures for their existing permit. Option D. Assume that the firearm permit issued in the province of Buenos Aires is automatically valid throughout Argentina, and no further action is required until the permit's expiration date. The correct answer is C. Immediately contact the relevant firearms authority in the province of Córdoba to inquire about and fulfill any necessary notification or re-registration procedures for their existing permit. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and the national registry. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves navigating potentially differing administrative procedures and notification requirements across distinct provincial jurisdictions, even though the core right to carry a firearm is nationally regulated. A permit holder's failure to properly notify or re-register can lead to administrative sanctions, including permit suspension or revocation, and potential legal repercussions if they are found to be carrying a firearm without valid authorization in the new province. The correct approach involves proactively understanding and complying with the specific notification and potential re-registration requirements of the new province of residence. This means contacting the relevant provincial authority, e.g., the police or a designated firearms registry office, in the new province to ascertain their procedures for individuals relocating with a valid firearm permit. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the specific administrative framework of the new jurisdiction, ensuring continued legal compliance and avoiding any period of unauthorized possession or carrying. It aligns with the principle of responsible firearm ownership, which includes maintaining up-to-date permits and respecting the regulatory authority of each province. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a valid permit from one province automatically suffices in another without any further action. This fails to acknowledge that, while the national registry exists, individual provinces may have their own administrative processes for updating records or verifying continued eligibility within their territory. This could lead to the permit holder being in violation of provincial regulations, even if their national permit is technically valid. Another incorrect approach would be to delay notification or re-registration until an issue arises, such as a routine police check or an attempt to renew the permit. This reactive stance increases the risk of unintended legal consequences and demonstrates a lack of due diligence in maintaining compliance. Professionals should employ a proactive and diligent decision-making process when dealing with interprovincial relocation concerning firearm permits. This involves identifying all relevant jurisdictions, researching their specific legal and administrative requirements, and initiating contact with the authorities in the new jurisdiction well in advance of the relocation or immediately upon arrival. The guiding principle should be to err on the side of caution and ensure full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Question 5. Which approach would be most effective for an individual in Argentina seeking to obtain a Portación de Arma de Fuego permit, considering the potential impact of relying on informal advice versus official channels? Option A. Proceeding with the application process by following the steps typically required for obtaining a hunting license in Argentina, as it is a related permit. Option B. Assuming that demonstrating a legitimate need for self-defense will automatically lead to the approval of the firearm possession permit without formal application. Option C. Directly consulting the Agencia Nacional de Materiales Controlados, and MAC, for the most current and accurate information regarding all application requirements, documentation, and procedures. Option D. Relying on the advice of a friend who has previously obtained a similar permit, assuming their experience will cover all necessary steps. The correct answer is C. Directly consulting the Agencia Nacional de Materiales Controlados, and MAC, for the most current and accurate information regarding all application requirements, documentation, and procedures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an individual to navigate the complex and highly regulated process of obtaining a firearm permit in Argentina, specifically the Portación de Arma de Fuego. The challenge lies in understanding the nuances of the legal requirements, the potential for misinterpretation, and the severe consequences of noncompliance, which can range from permit denial to criminal charges. The applicant's reliance on informal advice introduces a significant risk of error. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a direct and thorough engagement with the official regulatory body responsible for firearm permits in Argentina, the Agencia Nacional de Materiales Controlados, and MAC. This approach prioritizes accuracy and compliance by seeking information directly from the source. It ensures that all required documentation, background checks, psychological evaluation, and training are understood and met according to the specific provisions of Argentine law governing firearm possession. This direct consultation minimizes the risk of relying on outdated or incorrect information, thereby maximizing the chances of a successful and legal permit application. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on advice from a friend who previously obtained a permit is professionally unacceptable. This approach risks using outdated information, as regulations can change. Furthermore, the friend's personal experience may not align with the applicant's specific circumstances, which could lead to overlooking critical requirements. Similarly, assuming that the process is identical to obtaining a hunting license is a significant regulatory failure. Hunting licenses and firearm possession permits are distinct legal instruments with different application processes, eligibility criteria, and oversight bodies under Argentine law. Attempting to use a hunting license framework for a possession permit would likely result in a flawed application and potential legal repercussions. Finally, believing that permit is automatically granted upon demonstrating a need without undergoing the formal Arma process is a dangerous misconception. Argentine law mandates a rigorous application and approval procedure, and bypassing it constitutes a direct violation of firearm control regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing similar situations should adopt a systematic and evidence-based approach. First, identify the specific regulatory authority, and MASI in this case. Second, consult official government websites, legal statutes, and direct contact channels for the most current and accurate information. Third, meticulously document all requirements and procedures. Fourth, seek advice from qualified legal professionals specializing in firearm law in Argentina if any ambiguity arises. This structured approach ensures adherence to legal frameworks and ethical responsibilities. Question 6. Investigation of a firearm owner's compliance with Argentine firearm permit regulations reveals a permit issued 3 years ago. The owner states they have been carrying the firearm without incident since its issuance. What is the most critical step in assessing the legality of their current firearm carrying status in Argentina? Option A. Assume the permit is valid for any firearm the owner possesses, as long as they have a permit. Option B. Check if the owner has a clean criminal record, as this is the primary determinant of firearm legality. Option C. Accept the permit as valid since it has been used without reported issues for 3 years. Option D. Verify the current validity and expiration date of the firearm permit and confirm it authorizes carrying in the specific location and circumstances. The correct answer is D. Verify the current validity and expiration date of the firearm permit and confirm it authorizes carrying in the specific location and circumstances. Explanation. Investigation of a firearm owner's compliance with Argentine firearm permit regulations presents a scenario fraught with challenges due to the stringent nature of firearm control laws and the potential for severe legal repercussions for noncompliance. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the validity and scope of a firearm permit in a dynamic legal environment, ensuring that all actions taken by the firearm owner are within the bounds of the law as defined by Argentine legislation. This requires meticulous attention to detail and a thorough understanding of the specific requirements for carrying a firearm in different contexts within Argentina. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive review of the firearm owner's documentation against the current legal framework governing firearm permits in Argentina. This includes verifying the validity period of the permit, confirming that the firearm itself is registered and matches the details on the permit, and ensuring that the permit allows for the specific type of carrying, Portación, being undertaken, considering any geographical or situational restrictions stipulated by Argentine law. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal requirements for lawful firearm possession and carrying, minimizing the risk of contravening the provisions of the Ley de Armas y Explosivos, Law No. 20-429, and its subsequent regulations. Adherence to these specific Argentine laws is paramount for lawful firearm possession. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a permit, once issued, remains valid indefinitely without checking its expiration date. This fails to acknowledge the temporal limitations imposed by Argentine law, which mandates periodic renewal of firearm permits. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the physical possession of a permit without verifying if the firearm being carried is the one listed on the permit, or if the permit explicitly authorizes carrying in the specific location or situation. This overlooks the specificity requirements of Argentine firearm regulations, which link the permit to a particular firearm and may impose restrictions on where and when it can be carried. Finally, assuming that a permit issued in one Argentine province automatically grants carrying rights in another, without confirming interprovincial recognition or specific permits would be a failure to comply with the territorial scope of firearm permits as defined by national and provincial regulations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes rigorous verification of all permit-related documentation against the most current Argentine legal statutes and regulations. This involves a systematic checklist approach, confirming each element of the permit's validity, the firearm's registration, and the legality of the carrying activity in the given context. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the relevant Argentine authorities responsible for firearm regulation is the most prudent course of action. Question 7. Assessment of a firearm permit holder's justification for carrying a firearm in public in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when they report feeling uncomfortable due to a recent verbal altercation with a neighbor, but there is no evidence of direct threats or immediate physical danger. Option A. Permit holder's justification is valid because the permit itself grants the right to carry a firearm whenever the holder feels it is necessary for their personal security, irrespective of specific circumstances. Option B. The permit holder's justification is valid only if they can demonstrate specific, credible evidence of an imminent threat to their life or physical integrity stemming directly from the altercation, beyond mere discomfort or a generalized feeling of unease. Option C. The permit holder's justification is valid because any verbal altercation, regardless of its severity or the presence of direct threats, creates an immediate need to carry a firearm for self-defense. Option D. The permit holder's justification is valid if they believe they are at risk, as personal perception of danger is sufficient to warrant carrying a firearm under Argentine law. The correct answer is B. The permit holder's justification is valid only if they can demonstrate specific, credible evidence of an imminent threat to their life or physical integrity stemming directly from the altercation, beyond mere discomfort or a generalized feeling of unease. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the nuanced interpretation of the immediate need clause within Argentina's firearm permit regulations. A firearm permit holder must demonstrate a genuine and present danger to justify carrying a firearm in public. Misinterpreting this clause can lead to legal repercussions and compromise public safety. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between a perceived threat and an actual, immediate threat that necessitates the carrying of a firearm. The best professional approach involves a thorough, objective assessment of the circumstances, focusing on concrete evidence of an immediate threat to personal safety. This means evaluating the specific nature of any reported threats, the proximity of the perceived danger, and the availability of alternative, non-lethal means of protection. The permit holder must be able to articulate, based on verifiable facts, why their life or physical integrity is in imminent danger, thus satisfying the immediate need requirement as stipulated by Argentine law. This approach prioritizes adherence to the spirit and letter of the law, ensuring that the privilege of carrying a firearm is exercised responsibly and only when absolutely necessary. An incorrect approach would be to rely on generalized fears or past incidents that do not constitute an immediate threat. This fails to meet the legal threshold for immediate need and could be seen as an overreach of the permit's intended scope. Another incorrect approach is to assume that any perceived slight or inconvenience constitutes grounds for carrying a firearm, demonstrating a misunderstanding of the gravity and specific requirements of the law. Furthermore, acting solely on emotional distress or a subjective feeling of vulnerability, without objective evidence of an imminent threat, is also professionally unsound and legally deficient. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes objective risk assessment, strict adherence to legal definitions, and a commitment to public safety. This involves gathering all available facts, consulting relevant legal provisions, and making a decision based on demonstrable evidence rather than speculation or emotion. If in doubt, seeking clarification from legal counsel or relevant authorities is a prudent step. Question 8. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid Argentine firearm permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, has recently relocated from the province of Buenos Aires to the province of Mendoza. What is the most appropriate immediate action to ensure continued legal compliance with firearm carrying regulations in their new province of residence? Option A. Rely solely on the information and validity of the National Firearm Registry without seeking specific provincial confirmation for carrying. Option B. Wait for the provincial authorities in Mendoza to contact the individual regarding their relocation and permit status. Option C. Assume the national firearm permit is automatically valid for carrying in any province and continue carrying the firearm as before. Option D. Immediately contact the relevant firearm registry authority in the province of Mendoza to initiate the process of updating or endorsing the existing firearm permit for carrying within Mendoza. The correct answer is D. Immediately contact the relevant firearm registry authority in the province of Mendoza to initiate the process of updating or endorsing the existing firearm permit for carrying within Mendoza. Explanation: the evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and the national registry. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves navigating potentially differing provincial requirements for firearm possession, even when a national permit exists. The core issue is ensuring continuous legal compliance across jurisdictional lines, which demands proactive verification and adherence to the specific rules of the new domicile. The correct approach involves immediately initiating the process to update the firearm permit with the authorities of the new province of residence. This is correct because Argentine law, while establishing a national registry for firearms, also delegates significant regulatory authority to the provinces regarding the actual carrying and possession of firearms within their territories. Failure to notify and potentially re-register or obtain provincial endorsement for the permit in the new province could render the permit invalid for carrying a firearm in that specific jurisdiction, even if it remains valid nationally for possession. This proactive step ensures compliance with the principle of territoriality in law enforcement and firearm regulation, preventing any period of de facto noncompliance. An incorrect approach would be to assume that the national permit automatically covers carrying a firearm in any province without further action. This is a regulatory failure because it overlooks the specific provincial powers to regulate firearm carrying, which are distinct from national possession registration. Another incorrect approach would be to wait for the provincial authorities to discover the relocation through routine checks or other means. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it places the burden of compliance on the state and exposes the individual to potential legal repercussions for carrying a firearm without proper provincial authorization. Finally, relying solely on the national registry without confirming provincial endorsement for carrying is a flawed strategy, as the national registry primarily tracks ownership and possession, not the specific authorization to carry in a particular province. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes proactive compliance and jurisdictional awareness. And relocating, the first step should always be to identify and understand the specific legal requirements of the new jurisdiction. This involves consulting official provincial government resources or seeking advice from legal counsel specializing in firearm law in the new province. The principle of ignorance of the law is no excuse is paramount, and individuals must take all necessary steps to ensure their actions are legal in their new environment. Question 9. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an individual is presenting a Portación de Arma de Fuego permit for verification in Argentina. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action to ensure the permit's authenticity and current validity? Option A. Assume the permit is valid if the applicant has no prior criminal convictions recorded. Option B. Contact the relevant Argentine national or provincial authority to directly verify the permit holder's details, firearm registration, and expiration date. Option C. Accept the permit as valid based on the applicant's verbal confirmation of its legitimacy. Option D. Visually inspect the permit document for any apparent signs of tampering or damage. The correct answer is B. Contact the relevant Argentine national or provincial authority to directly verify the permit holder's details, firearm registration, and expiration date. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of the Argentine legal framework governing firearm permits, specifically the Portación de Arma de Fuego regulations. The core challenge lies in accurately assessing the validity and scope of a permit when presented with potentially ambiguous or incomplete information, balancing the individual's right to self-defense with public safety concerns, and adhering strictly to the established legal procedures. Misinterpretation can lead to severe legal consequences for both the individual and the issuing authority. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough verification of the firearm permit's authenticity and current validity directly with the issuing authority in Argentina. This approach entails contacting the relevant national or provincial police force or the Ministry of Security, depending on the specific permit type and issuing jurisdiction within Argentina, to confirm the permit holder's details, the firearm's registration, and the permit's expiration date. This is correct because Argentine law specifically the Ley de Armas de Fuego y Materiales Relacionados, Law No. 428 and its amendments, mandates strict control over firearm possession. Direct verification ensures compliance with these regulations, preventing the acceptance of fraudulent or expired permits and upholding the principle of lawful firearm ownership. It prioritizes accuracy and legal adherence over assumptions or reliance on potentially outdated documentation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Relying solely on the visual inspection of the permit document, even if it appears official, is an incorrect approach. This fails to account for the possibility of forged documents or permits that have been revoked or expired. Argentine law requires active verification, not passive acceptance of presented documents. Accepting the permit based on the applicant's verbal assurance of its validity is also an incorrect and dangerous approach. This bypasses the legal requirement for official confirmation and introduces a significant risk of noncompliance with firearm regulation, potentially enabling unauthorized possession. Assuming the permit is valid because the applicant has a clean criminal record without verifying the permit itself is another incorrect approach. While a clean record is a prerequisite for obtaining a permit, it does not guarantee the current validity or authenticity of an existing permit. The permit itself must be confirmed as active and legitimate. Professional reasoning. Professionals encountering such situations should adopt a systematic verification process. This involves 1. Initial document review. Visually inspect the permit for obvious signs of alteration or damage. 2. Direct verification. Immediately initiate contact with the designated Argentine authority, e.g., RENAR Registro Nacional de Armas or provincial police, to confirm the permit's status, holder's identity, and firearm registration. 3. Cross-referencing. If possible, cross-reference information provided by the applicant with official databases. 4. Documentation. Maintain a clear record of all verification steps taken and the outcome. This structured approach ensures legal compliance, mitigates risk, and upholds the integrity of the firearm permit system in Argentina. Question 10. The evaluation methodology shows that a firearm permit holder in Argentina is due for renewal. The last renewal fee paid was ARS 4,000 5 years ago. Current official regulations indicate a base renewal fee of ARS 6,000 for a standard 5-year permit, with an additional administrative processing charge of 10% of the base fee. If the permit holder's firearm falls into a category that incurs a 5% surcharge on the total fee, what is the correct renewal fee in Argentine pesos Rs? Option A, Rs 7,000. Option B, Rs 6,600. Option C, Rs 6,930. Option D, Rs 6,400. The correct answer is C, Rs 6,930. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that determining the appropriate fee for a firearm permit renewal in Argentina requires a precise understanding of the applicable regulations and the applicant's circumstances. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves financial calculations tied to legal compliance, where errors can lead to noncompliance, financial penalties for the applicant, or an underestimation of government revenue. The complexity arises from potential variations in permit types, renewal periods, and administrative costs that might influence the final fee. The best professional practice involves calculating the renewal fee based on the official fee schedule published by the relevant Argentine authority, e.g., the Registro Nacional de Armas RENAR or its successor agencies, factoring in the specific category of the firearm permit and the standard renewal period. This approach ensures adherence to the legal framework governing firearm permits in Argentina, guaranteeing that the applicant pays the correct amount as stipulated by law and that government revenue is accurately accounted for. For example, if the standard renewal fee for a particular permit type is ARS 5,000 and the renewal period is 5 years, the calculation would be straightforward. However, if there are additional administrative charges or a pro rata calculation is required for an extended or shortened period, these must be explicitly accounted for according to RENAR guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to estimate the fee based on past renewals or general knowledge of administrative costs without consulting the current official fee schedule. This fails to comply with the specific, up-to-date regulatory requirements, potentially leading to the applicant underpaying or overpaying, and thus violating the spirit and letter of Argentine firearm regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to apply a flat percentage increase to the previous fee without verifying if the increase is officially sanctioned or if the basis for the previous fee remains valid. This disregards the possibility of changes in the fee structure or the introduction of new administrative components. Finally, calculating the fee solely based on the applicant's perceived ability to pay, rather than the established legal fee, is a severe ethical and regulatory breach, as it introduces arbitrary criteria and undermines the fairness and transparency of the permit system. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with identifying the specific type of firearm permit and its renewal cycle. This should be followed by consulting the most current official fee schedule and any accompanying administrative directives from the relevant Argentine authority. Any calculations should be double-checked against the official figures and formulas provided. If ambiguity exists, seeking clarification directly from the issuing authority is paramount to ensure accurate and compliant fee assessment. Question 11. System analysis indicates that an individual in Argentina possesses a physical Portación de Arma de Fuego permit document that has recently expired. What is the most accurate and legally compliant advice to provide regarding their ability to carry a firearm? Option A. Advise the individual to keep the expired permit document discreetly with them and avoid any interaction with law enforcement to minimize the risk of discovery. Option B. Advise the individual that they are no longer legally authorized to carry a firearm in Argentina because their permit has expired, and they must cease carrying until a new, valid permit is obtained. Option C. Advise the individual that they can continue to carry their firearm as long as they have the expired permit document with them, as it shows intent to comply. Option D. Advise the individual to renew their permit as soon as possible and inform them that they can continue carrying their firearm until the new permit is issued. The correct answer is B. Advise the individual that they are no longer legally authorized to carry a firearm in Argentina because their permit has expired, and they must cease carrying until a new, valid permit is obtained. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the nuanced interpretation of carrying a firearm permit in Argentina. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between the physical possession of the permit document and the legal authorization to carry a firearm, especially when the permit itself has expired. Misinterpreting this distinction can lead to severe legal consequences for the individual and potential professional repercussions for the advisor. Careful judgment is required to ensure advice aligns strictly with Argentine law regarding firearm permits. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves advising the individual that while they may physically possess the expired permit document, they are no longer legally authorized to carry a firearm in Argentina. This is because the permit, being expired, does not confer current legal standing for firearm possession. Argentine law, specifically the regulations governing the Portación de Arma de Fuego, firearm carrying permit, mandates that the permit must be current and valid to authorize the carrying of a firearm. Possession of an expired document does not equate to a valid permit. Incorrect approach is analysis. Advising the individual that they can continue to carry their firearm because they have the expired permit document in their possession is a significant regulatory failure. This approach ignores the fundamental requirement of a valid, unexpired permit as stipulated by Argentine firearm laws. It creates a false sense of security and exposes the individual to immediate legal jeopardy, including potential confiscation of the firearm and criminal charges. Another incorrect approach would be to advise the individual to simply renew the permit without clarifying the immediate cessation of their carrying authorization. A renewal is the correct long-term solution. Failing to inform them that they cannot carry a firearm during the renewal process is a critical omission. This could lead them to believe they can continue carrying until the new permit is issued, which is legally inaccurate. Finally, advising the individual to conceal the expired permit and hope for the best if stopped by authorities is ethically and legally reprehensible. This promotes deception and actively encourages the violation of Argentine firearm regulations. It demonstrates a complete disregard for legal compliance and professional integrity. Professional reasoning. Professionals advising on firearm permit matters in Argentina must adopt a strict, literal interpretation of the law. The decision-making process should begin with identifying the core legal requirement, a valid and current Portación de Arma de Fuego permit. If the permit is expired, the legal authorization to carry a firearm is immediately suspended. The professional must then clearly communicate this suspension to the individual, explaining the legal ramifications of carrying without a valid permit. The next step is to guide the individual through the legal process of renewal or obtaining a new permit, emphasizing that carrying is prohibited until the new authorization is officially granted. Transparency and adherence to the letter of the law are paramount. Question 12. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid Portación de Arma de Fuego permit in the province of Buenos Aires is planning to relocate their permanent residence to the province of Córdoba, Argentina. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure continued legal firearm possession and permit validity in their new province? Option A. Advise the individual to simply carry their existing firearm permit and firearm to Córdoba and wait to be contacted by authorities if any issues arise. Option B. Assume that the firearm permit issued in the province of Buenos Aires is automatically valid and recognized in the province of Córdoba without any further action, as it is a national permit. Option C. Rely solely on the National Firearm Registry to confirm the permit's validity and assume no provincial-specific actions are required upon relocation. Option D. Proactively contact the relevant firearm authority in the province of Córdoba to inquire about their specific procedures for permit portability, notification requirements, and any necessary re-registration or documentation updates for residents relocating from other Argentine provinces. The correct answer is D. Proactively contact the relevant firearm authority in the province of Córdoba to inquire about their specific procedures for permit portability, notification requirements, and any necessary re-registration or documentation updates for residents relocating from other Argentine provinces. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and the national registry. The professional challenge lies in the potential for differing provincial requirements for permit validity, notification procedures, and the need to ensure the firearm remains legally registered and accessible to the permit holder without violating any local ordinances or national laws. This scenario demands careful judgment to avoid legal repercussions for the individual and to uphold the integrity of the firearm control system. The best approach involves proactively verifying the specific requirements of the new province of residence regarding firearm permit portability and notification. This entails contacting the relevant provincial authority, e.g., the police or a designated firearms registry office, in the new province to understand their procedures for recognizing an existing permit from another Argentine province, any necessary re-registration or notification obligations, and whether any additional documentation or inspections are required. This proactive verification ensures compliance with both national and provincial laws, safeguarding the permit holder's legal status and preventing potential violations. This aligns with the ethical obligation to act with due diligence and to ensure all legal requirements are met. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a firearm permit issued in one Argentine province is automatically valid and recognized without any further action in another province. This assumption disregards the possibility of differing provincial regulations and notification requirements, potentially leading to the permit holder being in violation of the new province's laws. This failure to verify specific provincial requirements constitutes a regulatory failure and an ethical lapse in providing accurate guidance. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the national registry without confirming provincial-specific procedures. While the national registry is crucial, it may not encompass all the immediate procedural steps or specific documentation required by a particular province upon relocation. This can lead to overlooking critical local requirements, resulting in non-compliance. A third incorrect approach is to advise the permit holder to simply carry their existing permit and firearm without any prior consultation with the authorities in the new province. This is a direct contravention of the principle of due diligence and could expose the individual to immediate legal consequences if the new province has specific notification or re-registration requirements that have not been met. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, identify the core legal requirement carrying a firearm permit. Second, recognize the potential for jurisdictional variations, provincial differences within Argentina. Third, prioritize proactive verification of specific requirements in the new jurisdiction. Fourth, consult official sources, provincial authorities. Fifth, provide clear, actionable advice based on verified information. Finally, emphasize the importance of ongoing compliance and awareness of any changes in regulations. Question 13. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid Argentine firearm permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, has recently relocated from the province of Buenos Aires to the province of Córdoba. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure continued legal compliance regarding their firearm permit? Option A. Wait for the province of Córdoba's authorities to discover the relocation through routine checks or other means before taking any action. Option B. Proactively contact the relevant firearm licensing authority in the province of Córdoba and the Registro Nacional de Armas, RENAR, to inquire about and complete any necessary procedures for updating their permit information due to the change of residence. Option C. Only notify the Registro Nacional de Armas, RENAR, of the address change, as it is the national registry. Option D. Assume that the existing national firearm permit is automatically valid in the province of Córdoba and no further action is required. The correct answer is B. Proactively contact the relevant firearm licensing authority in the province of Córdoba and the Registro Nacional de Armas, RENAR, to inquire about and complete any necessary procedures for updating their permit information due to the change of residence. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and the national registry. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves navigating potentially differing administrative procedures and notification requirements across various Argentine provinces, even though the underlying national framework for firearm possession exists. A permit holder's responsibility extends beyond initial issuance to maintaining compliance with current residency. The best professional approach involves proactively verifying the specific requirement of the new province of residence. This means contacting the relevant provincial authority responsible for firearm permits, often a provincial police department or a designated security agency, and the national registry, Registro Nacional de Armas RENAR, to understand their procedures for updating permit information or potentially reapplying if provincial requirements differ significantly. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal obligation to inform authorities of a change in residence and ensures continued compliance with Argentine firearm laws, thereby avoiding potential legal repercussions and ensuring the permit remains valid in the new jurisdiction. It prioritizes accuracy and adherence to the letter of the law. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a valid national permit automatically covers all provincial jurisdictions without any further action. This fails to acknowledge that, while there is a national framework, provinces may have specific administrative processes for updating records or even additional local requirements that must be met. This could lead to the permit holder being in violation of provincial regulations, even if their national permit is technically valid. Another incorrect approach would be to only notify RENAR and not the specific provincial authority. While RENAR is the national registry, provincial authorities are responsible for the day-to-day administration and enforcement within their territory. Failing to notify them directly could result in a lack of awareness of the permit holder's presence and status within that province, potentially leading to issues during routine checks or if a new permit application is ever needed. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core legal obligation, notification of change of address. This should be followed by a thorough research phase to identify all relevant regulatory bodies, national and provincial, and their specific requirements. Proactive communication with these authorities is paramount. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification directly from the source is the most prudent course of action. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that an individual in Buenos Aires presents a previously issued Portación de Arma de Fuego permit for inspection. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action to assess the validity of their right to carry a firearm in Argentina? Option A. Verify the current validity of the Portación de Arma de Fuego permit. confirm it matches the individual's declared purpose for carrying, and ensure ongoing eligibility as per Argentine firearm regulations. Option B, accept the previously issued permit as definitive proof of ongoing authorization to carry a firearm, assuming no changes have occurred since its issuance. Option C, focus solely on the applicant's stated intention for carrying the firearm, disregarding the specific requirements and validity of the existing permit. Option D, proceed with the assumption that the permit is valid, unless the individual explicitly states otherwise or presents evidence of its revocation. The correct answer is A. Verify the current validity of the Portación de Arma de Fuego permit, confirm it matches the individual's declared purpose for carrying, and ensure ongoing eligibility as per Argentine firearm regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent responsibility associated with firearm permits in Argentina. The core issue lies in balancing the legal right to carry a firearm with the paramount public safety obligations and the specific requirements of the Argentine legal framework governing firearm possession. Misinterpreting or neglecting the nuances of the Portación de Arma de Fuego permit can lead to severe legal repercussions for the individual and potential liability for any entity involved in the permit process. Careful judgment is required to ensure strict adherence to the law and ethical considerations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough review of the applicant's current Portación de Arma de Fuego permit, verifying its validity, ensuring it aligns with the stated purpose of possession, and confirming that the applicant meets all ongoing eligibility criteria as stipulated by Argentine law. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal requirements for carrying a firearm in Argentina, prioritizing compliance with the specific regulations set forth by the national authorities responsible for firearm control. It ensures that the permit is not only issued, but also actively maintained in accordance with the law, thereby upholding public safety and individual rights. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that a previously issued permit, regardless of its current status or the applicant's present circumstances, automatically grants continued authorization. This fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of firearm permits, which often require periodic renewal and ongoing eligibility checks under Argentine law. The regulatory framework mandates continuous compliance, not just initial approval. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the applicant's self-declaration of eligibility without independent verification. Argentine law places a burden of proof and due diligence on both the applicant and the relevant authorities. Circumventing verification processes, even if seemingly efficient, undermines the integrity of the permit system and creates a significant regulatory risk. A further incorrect approach is to interpret the permit as granting unrestricted carrying privileges in all situations. Argentine firearm laws, like those in many jurisdictions, typically include specific restrictions on where and when a firearm can be carried, even with a valid permit. Failing to acknowledge these limitations constitutes a direct violation of the regulatory framework. Professional reasoning. Professionals dealing with firearm permits in Argentina must adopt a proactive and diligent approach. This involves understanding the specific provisions of the Ley de Armas de Fuego, firearms law, and its implementing regulations. A decision-making framework should prioritize legal compliance, thorough verification, and a clear understanding of the permit's scope and limitations. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the relevant Argentine authorities, e.g., the Registro Nacional de Armas RENAR or its successor, is essential. The process should always be guided by the principle of public safety, balanced with the legal rights of eligible individuals. Question 15. What factors determine the validity and ongoing compliance of a Portación de Arma de Fuego permit for an individual residing in Argentina? Option A. Reliance on informal discussions with other firearm owners in Argentina to understand the current requirements for maintaining a permit. Option B. The belief that a permit obtained for personal defense is automatically valid for any and all situations without further justification or renewal. Option C. The meticulous and current submission of all legally mandated documentation, including proof of identity, background checks, psychological evaluations, and a demonstrated legitimate need, as well as adherence to renewal timelines and reporting any significant changes in personal circumstances to the relevant Argentine authorities. Option D. The assumption that a permit issued in the past remains valid as long as the individual has not been convicted of a new crime, without requiring any further documentation or re-verification. The correct answer is C. The meticulous and current submission of all legally mandated documentation, including proof of identity, background checks, psychological evaluations, and a demonstrated legitimate need, as well as adherence to renewal timelines and reporting any significant changes in personal circumstances to the relevant Argentine authorities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an individual to navigate the complex legal framework surrounding firearm possession in Argentina, specifically concerning the Portación de Arma de Fuego permit. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to the strict requirements can lead to severe legal consequences, including criminal charges and the permanent loss of firearm rights. The challenge lies in understanding the nuances of the law, the specific documentation required, and the ongoing obligations of permit holders, all within the context of public safety and individual rights. Careful judgment is required to ensure full compliance and responsible firearm ownership. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough and proactive understanding of the specific requirements for obtaining and maintaining a Portación de Arma de Fuego permit in Argentina. This includes meticulously verifying that all required documentation, such as proof of identity, criminal background checks, psychological evaluations, and proof of legitimate need, are current and accurately submitted according to the regulations set forth by the relevant Argentine authorities, e.g., the Registro Nacional de Armas RENAR, or its successor. Furthermore, it necessitates understanding the ongoing obligations, such as renewal periods and any changes in personal circumstances that might affect permit validity. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal mandate for permit holders to demonstrate continuous eligibility and compliance, thereby upholding the principles of responsible firearm ownership and public safety as enshrined in Argentine law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that a previously issued permit automatically renews or remains valid indefinitely without active re-verification and submission of updated documentation. This fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of legal requirements and the responsibility of the permit holder to stay informed and compliant with current regulations. Such an approach risks permit expiration and subsequent illegal possession of a firearm, violating Argentine firearm laws. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on informal advice or anecdotal evidence from other permit holders regarding the renewal process or documentation requirements. While peer experience can be informative, it is not a substitute for official guidance. Legal requirements are precise, and variations in individual circumstances or changes in regulations can render informal advice inaccurate and lead to noncompliance. This approach risks overlooking critical, legally mandated steps. A further incorrect approach is to believe that a permit obtained for one specific purpose or under certain circumstances automatically covers all future situations or needs without re-evaluation. Argentine law often requires a demonstrated legitimate need for carrying a firearm, and this need must be continuously justifiable. Failing to re-establish or demonstrate this need when circumstances change or upon renewal can lead to the invalidation of the permit. This approach disregards the principle that firearm permits are granted based on specific, verifiable conditions. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing situations involving firearm permits in Argentina should adopt a systematic and diligent approach. This involves 1. Identifying the specific governing legislation and regulatory bodies. 2. Consulting official sources for the most up-to-date requirements and procedures. 3. Maintaining a detailed record of all submitted documents and renewal dates. 4. Proactively seeking clarification from authorities when in doubt. 5. Understanding that compliance is an ongoing responsibility, not a one-time event. This structured decision-making process ensures adherence to the law, promotes responsible conduct, and mitigates legal risks. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid Argentine firearm permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, is planning to relocate from the province of Buenos Aires to the province of Córdoba. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action for this individual to ensure their firearm permit remains valid and recognized in their new province of residence? Option A. Wait until the permit expires and then apply for a new permit in Cordoba, assuming the old one will suffice until then. Option B. Assume the national firearm permit is automatically valid in Cordoba and no further action is required, as the permit is issued under Argentine national law. Option C. Proactively contact the relevant firearm registry or security authority in the province of Cordoba to inquire about and follow their specific procedures for updating permit holder information or re-registering the firearm. Option D. Rely on advice from other firearm permit holders in Cordoba, obtained through online forums regarding the process for relocation. The correct answer is C. Proactively contact the relevant firearm registry or security authority in the province of Cordoba to inquire about and follow their specific procedures for updating permit holder information or re-registering the firearm. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and their interaction with national laws. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves navigating potentially differing administrative procedures and requirements across distinct provincial jurisdictions, even though the core right to carry a firearm is governed by national legislation. A permit holder's responsibility to update their information and potentially re-register their firearm or permit in a new province is paramount to maintaining legal compliance and public safety. The best professional approach involves proactively verifying the specific requirements of the new province of residence. This means contacting the relevant provincial authority responsible for firearm permits, often a provincial police department or a designated security agency, to understand their procedures for updating permit information or, if necessary, initiating a new application process. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the legal obligation to comply with the specific jurisdictional rules of the new domicile. Argentine Law No. 20-429, National Law on Arms and Ammunition, establishes the framework for firearm possession, but its implementation and the administrative processes for permits are often managed at the provincial level. Therefore, direct engagement with the provincial authority ensures adherence to the most granular and applicable regulations, preventing potential legal infractions. An incorrect approach would be to assume that the existing national permit is automatically valid and sufficient in the new province, without any further action. This fails to acknowledge that, while the national law sets the overarching framework, provinces may have specific administrative requirements for updating permit holder information, or even revalidating permits to reflect a change of address. This could lead to a violation of provincial regulations, even if the national permit remains technically valid. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on informal advice from other permit holders or online forums. While these sources might offer anecdotal information, they do not constitute official guidance and could be inaccurate or outdated, leading to noncompliance. Relying on such information bypasses the official channels designed for ensuring legal adherence and could result in significant legal repercussions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes direct communication with official regulatory bodies when navigating jurisdictional changes. This involves identifying the relevant authority in the new jurisdiction, understanding their specific procedural requirements, and diligently following those procedures. This systematic approach ensures compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, thereby safeguarding the individual's legal standing and contributing to public safety. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid firearm carrying permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, issued in the province of Cordoba, Argentina, is planning to relocate their permanent residence to the province of Buenos Aires. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action to ensure their firearm carrying permit remains valid and enforceable in their new province of residence? Option A. Assume that the firearm carrying permit issued in Cordoba is automatically recognized and valid in the province of Buenos Aires without any further administrative steps, as it is a national permit. Option B. Proactively research and comply with any specific registration, notification, or revalidation requirements mandated by the province of Buenos Aires for individuals relocating with a firearm carrying permit, even if the national permit remains valid. Option C. Wait until a specific need arises or until the Cordoba permit is close to expiring before investigating the requirements for carrying a firearm in the province of Buenos Aires. Option D. Rely on informal advice from other firearm owners in Buenos Aires regarding the validity and procedures for carrying a firearm with a permit from another province. The correct answer is B. Proactively research and comply with any specific registration, notification, or revalidation requirements mandated by the province of Buenos Aires for individuals relocating with a firearm carrying permit, even if the national permit remains valid. Explanation: the evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations and their interaction with national laws. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves navigating potentially differing administrative procedures and notification requirements across distinct provincial jurisdictions. Even though the core right to carry a firearm is governed by national legislation, a permit holder's failure to properly update their information can lead to administrative complications and potential legal issues if they are found to be carrying a firearm without having complied with the new jurisdiction's requirements. The correct approach involves proactively understanding and complying with the specific firearm carrying regulations of the new province of residence. This means investigating whether the province of Buenos Aires requires a separate registration, notification, or revalidation process for a firearm permit issued in another province, or if it recognizes the national permit with a simple notification. This proactive step ensures that the permit holder remains in full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, thereby avoiding any potential legal repercussions or administrative hurdles. This aligns with the ethical obligation of a permit holder to be fully informed and compliant with the laws of the jurisdiction in which they reside and carry a firearm. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a firearm permit issued in one Argentine province is automatically valid and recognized without any further action in another province, such as Buenos Aires. This overlooks the possibility of provincial administrative nuances or specific notification requirements that, while not invalidating the national permit itself, could lead to non-compliance with local administrative procedures. Another incorrect approach is to delay or neglect the process of understanding the new provincial requirements, hoping that the existing national permit will suffice indefinitely. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and can result in a permit holder unknowingly operating outside the bounds of local regulations. Finally, relying solely on informal advice from other permit holders or online forums without consulting official provincial sources or legal counsel is also an unacceptable approach, as it introduces a high risk of misinformation and noncompliance. Professional reasoning in such situations requires a systematic approach. First, identify the core legal framework, national firearm laws in Argentina. Second, recognize that subnational jurisdictions, provinces, may have specific administrative procedures or notification requirements. Third, proactively research these provincial requirements through official government channels or by seeking advice from qualified legal professionals specializing in firearm law within the relevant province. Fourth, act promptly to fulfill any identified obligations before carrying a firearm in the new jurisdiction. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal that an individual holding a valid Portación de Arma de Fuego permit in Argentina has recently relocated to a new province. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action to ensure the continued validity of their firearm permit? Option A. Inform the local police department in the new province of the address change, believing this will automatically update the National Firearm Registry. Option B. Formally notify the Registro Nacional de Armas (RENAR) of the new address by submitting the required documentation and updating the permit details within the legally mandated time frame. Option C. Continue carrying the firearm under the existing permit, assuming it remains valid until its official expiration date, without informing RENAR of the address change. Option D. Wait for RENAR to contact the individual to request updated address information before taking any action. The correct answer is B. Formally notify the Registro Nacional de Armas (RENAR) of the new address by submitting the required documentation and updating the permit details within the legally mandated time frame. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a firearm owner in Argentina who has recently moved and needs to ensure their firearm permit remains valid. The core difficulty lies in navigating the specific administrative requirements and timelines for updating permit information with the relevant authorities, the Registro Nacional de Armas, RENAR, to avoid legal repercussions. Failure to do so can result in the invalidation of the permit and potential legal penalties. Careful judgment is required to understand the precise obligations under Argentine law regarding address changes for firearm permit holders. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively and formally notifying RENAR of the change of address within the legally stipulated timeframe. This approach ensures continuous compliance with Argentine Law No. 428 on firearms and explosives and its implementing regulations. By submitting the required documentation and updating the permit details, the individual maintains the legal validity of their firearm possession, demonstrating due diligence and adherence to the law. This proactive step prevents any potential lapse in permit status and avoids future complications. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to notify RENAR and assuming the permit remains valid until its expiry date is a significant regulatory failure. Argentine law requires timely updates to permit information, and inaction constitutes a breach of these obligations, potentially leading to the permit being deemed invalid. Assuming that a verbal notification to a local police station is sufficient to update RENAR records is also a regulatory failure. While local law enforcement may be aware of the move, they are not the designated authority for maintaining national firearm registry information. This approach bypasses the formal administrative process mandated by RENAR. Waiting for RENAR to initiate contact or send a notification regarding the address change is an abdication of personal responsibility. The onus is on the permit holder to keep their information current, and relying on the authority to prompt them is not a legally recognized or ethically sound practice. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a systematic approach. First, identify the specific legal obligations related to firearm permits in Argentina, particularly concerning changes of address. Second, consult the official guidelines or contact RENAR directly to ascertain the exact procedure and required documentation for updating personal information. Third, execute the required administrative steps promptly and retain proof of submission. This methodical process ensures compliance and mitigates legal risks. Question 19. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual holding a valid firearm carrying permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, issued in the province of Buenos Aires, is planning to relocate permanently to the province of Mendoza. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure continued legal firearm possession and carrying in Mendoza, adhering to Argentine regulations? Option A. Rely on advice from local firearm owners in the province of Mendoza regarding the legality of carrying a firearm with a permit from another province. Option B. Assume the national firearm carrying permit is automatically valid for carrying a firearm in the province of Mendoza due to its national issuance. Option C. Inform the original issuing authority in the province of Buenos Aires of the relocation and await confirmation of permit validity in Mendoza. Option D. Proactively research and comply with the specific firearm carrying permit requirements of the province of Mendoza, including any necessary transfer or re-registration procedures, before carrying a firearm there. Correct answer is D. Proactively research and comply with the specific firearm carrying permit requirements of the province of Mendoza, including any necessary transfer or re-registration procedures, before carrying a firearm there. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a firearm permit holder's relocation within Argentina requires a nuanced understanding of provincial firearm regulations, which can vary significantly. This scenario is professionally challenging because a permit holder might assume their national permit is universally valid without considering local enforcement and registration requirements. Failure to comply with provincial specificities can lead to legal repercussions, including permit revocation or criminal charges. The correct approach involves proactively verifying the specific firearm carrying permit, Portación de Arma de Fuego, requirements of the new province of residence, and initiating the necessary transfer or re-registration process. This is correct because Argentine federal law establishes a framework for firearm possession, but provincial authorities are responsible for the practical implementation and oversight of carrying permits within their territories. Article 10 of Law 25/938, National Registry of Firearm Possession, and subsequent provincial decrees mandate that individuals must comply with the regulations of the jurisdiction where they intend to carry a firearm. Therefore, a thorough review of the target province's specific laws and procedures for permit validation or reissuance is essential to ensure ongoing legal compliance and responsible firearm ownership. An incorrect approach would be to assume that the existing national permit is automatically valid for carrying a firearm in the new province without any further action. This fails to acknowledge the decentralized nature of firearm permit enforcement in Argentina, where provincial governments have the authority to impose additional requirements or verification steps. This approach risks violating provincial laws, leading to potential confiscation of the firearm and legal penalties. Another incorrect approach would be to only inform the original issuing authority of the relocation without confirming the validity of the permit in the new province. While informing the original authority is a good practice, it does not absolve the individual of the responsibility to comply with the laws of their new domicile. This approach overlooks the critical step of ensuring the permit is recognized and legally enforceable in the destination province. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to rely solely on informal advice from other firearm owners in the new province. While anecdotal information can be helpful, it is not a substitute for official regulatory guidance. Legal compliance must be based on verified information from provincial authorities or official legal sources, as informal advice can be inaccurate or outdated, leading to non-compliance. Professionals should adopt a proactive and diligent approach to relocation involving firearm permits. This involves identifying the relevant provincial authorities, consulting their official websites or direct contact for specific regulations, and initiating any required administrative processes well in advance of the move. A checklist approach, verifying each step of the new province's requirements, is a sound decision-making framework. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows that an individual in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina, is seeking to renew their Portación de Arma de Fuego permit, which is valid for 3 years. The current renewal fee is ARS 5,000, and there is a standard administrative processing fee of ARS 1,500 per renewal. Additionally, historical data suggests an average annual increase of 10% in both fees due to inflation and regulatory adjustments. What is the projected total cost for renewing the permit over its 3-year validity period, assuming the first year's fees are paid at the beginning of the period? Option A, Rs 19,500. Option B, Rs 21,000. Option C, Rs 20,000. Option D, Rs 22,965. The correct answer is D, Rs 22,965. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the financial impact of firearm permit renewal fees on an individual's budget requires careful consideration of various factors, particularly in Argentina, where the Portación de Arma de Fuego permit is subject to specific regulations and associated costs. This scenario is professionally challenging because it demands not only an understanding of the permit's legal requirements, but also the ability to translate those requirements into a quantifiable financial impact, considering potential fluctuations and administrative costs. Accurate financial forecasting is crucial for individuals to budget effectively and avoid noncompliance due to unforeseen expenses. The best approach involves a comprehensive calculation of all direct and indirect costs associated with maintaining the firearm permit over a defined period, typically the permit's validity. This includes the base renewal fee, any applicable administrative charges levied by the relevant Argentine authorities, e.g., provincial police or federal agencies depending on the specific permit type and location, and a contingency for potential increases in fees or new administrative requirements that may arise during the permit's term. This method is correct because it aligns with the principle of prudent financial planning and ensures the individual has a realistic understanding of their financial obligations. It directly addresses the regulatory framework by accounting for all mandated fees and potential administrative burdens, thereby promoting compliance and responsible firearm ownership. An incorrect approach would be to only consider the stated renewal fee without factoring in additional administrative costs. This is professionally unacceptable because it underestimates the total financial outlay, potentially leading to a shortfall in funds when the permit needs renewal. It fails to acknowledge the full scope of regulatory requirements, which often include processing fees or other administrative charges that are not always explicitly stated as part of the renewal fee itself. Another incorrect approach is to assume the renewal fee will remain static throughout the permit's validity and not account for any potential increases. This is a flawed strategy, as regulatory fees can be subject to change due to inflation, policy adjustments, or legislative amendments in Argentina. Relying on an outdated or static fee structure can lead to unexpected financial burdens and potential lapses in permit validity if the individual cannot meet the updated costs. A further incorrect approach is to only budget for the renewal fee and ignore any potential costs associated with mandatory training or reevaluation processes that might be required for permit renewal under Argentine law. This overlooks crucial components of the regulatory compliance process, which can incur significant expenses. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a systematic breakdown of all known and potential costs. This begins with identifying the primary regulatory fee, then researching and quantifying all associated administrative charges. It is also prudent to investigate any ancillary requirements, such as mandatory training or medical evaluations, and their associated costs. Finally, incorporating a buffer for unforeseen increases or changes in regulations is essential for robust financial planning. This structured approach ensures that individuals are fully informed of their financial responsibilities, promoting compliance and responsible management of their firearm permit.